system, and at the same time, the living conditions of children living in institutions also changed. In the case of placement of a child removed from the family, the law gives preference to placement back in the biological family, foster care or adoption, and lastly, placement in a children's home. The aim is for children to live in a family environment rather than an institutional one, even if this is not possible within their own family. Another important aspect for children is to spend as little time away from their families as possible. In the context of deinstitutionalization, large institutions have been continuously restructured, smaller, more family-oriented residential homes have been created, and foster care has been expanded. After 1997, the first phase of the process involved the creation of small residential homes to provide family-like conditions for children. The second phase of their institutionalization started in 2004, when more children were placed in foster care than in children's homes. The third phase of the process started in 2014, when more 90% of children under 12, 2/3 of all children in specialized care were placed in foster care. In the remainder of the presentation, the research will be presented.
Foster parent can be who is older than 24 years, capable of acting with impunity, older than the foster child minimum of 18 years, but not more, with 50 years. The apartment is cited for raising a child. Maximum of 6 children can live in one family. A foster parent who provides special care. A foster parent providing special care who meets a legal requirement, meets the needs of special children. One of the special group in Hungary, chronically ill, handicapped persons, children under 3 years. Another special group of Hungary, antisocial child, child offender, behavior problem child, child using drugs, and victim of child trafficking. There are 5,706 foster parents working in Hungary, 2020. The number of young people treated in child protection care is 23,327, is growing. Number of children living with a foster parent. Purpose of research, presentation of foster parents according to educational needs. How many special foster parents there are? Questionnaire research, pilot research. The questionnaire is divided into 3 parts. Research simple, foster parents working for the St. Peter and Paul Greek Catholic Child Protection Center, foster parents who participate in the research 21. Children living with the foster parent interviewed 67. According to special needs, one of the special foster parents, 7 people. They raised children under 3 years, 9 people. Handicapped child, 1 people. The foster parent in question, antisocial child offender, don't accept children with behavior problems. For these children, 58 is Roma. The majority are foster parents, and inclusion of Roma children is not problem. The majority of foster parents prefer to raise children with normal needs. The number of children with special needs is increasing slightly. Growth is more in the reception of children under 3 years of age. Affected foster parents don't accept children with antisocial children, child offenders, or behavior problems. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much.
Don't accept children with antisocial children, child offenders, or behavior problems. Thank you for.
The next presentation will be Natalia Lempaszek from University of Gdańsk, the role and importance of school students' book in creating the imagine of disability by children of early school classes.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear. But we don't see presentation, unfortunately.
Okay, I share my presentation.
Could you try again, share your screen presentation? Thank you. Now we can see. Dear professor, you can start.
I would like to say about the role of and importance of school students' books in creating the image of disability by children of early school classes. And I would be speak about the research of students' books. And at first, I would like to say about the stereotypes, because when we are saying about the image, about the create of something, we can't don't say about stereotypes, because it's a really important aspect of image and of creating of the and imagination of our image. So when we say about the stereotypes, we also have to think about the group, the relationships in groups. So when we think how we create, how we make the relationships, at first we have to know that the first step is the social contact. The second is the institutional contact, and in the institution there people can meet together, they can spend the time together, and all relationships start in institution. And when one child meet another child, we have some steps of making this relationship. At first, it's main and facilitating situation factors, and its influence, it depends on traits and experience of interaction participants, and the second step is this first contact, and it's also on the first contact influence initial anxiety, and the optional situation leads to a non-generalized sympathy. And the next steps is permanent and prolonged contact, and its reduction of prejudices. And the last is the combined group, and it makes strong reduction of prejudices, because we have to feel that the person who is not from our groups, it's not a stranger, but it like we are. So when we want to destroying stereotypes, we shouldn't think in this category like we children, we students, we creators. So we should give the children, we have to show as many examples as possible that everyone is different, not only one category, not only single examples like, for example, able people and disabled people, but a lot of category that everybody is different, and we have to show that we are all diversity, not showing one different group, but a lot of groups make that we will not create this one foreign group category. And a lot of psychologists say that very important role is the empathy, because the empathy is the most important things when we talk about the group, and when we talk about one group and the stereotypes. And it's also help us to make something like role play, and the role play is the feeling the same like others, and we can more understand what another person is feeling when we meet him. For example, when we met someone who is on the wheelchair, and when we can use our sympathy and when we can role play, we can understand that it's not the person on the wheelchair, but it's just a person, and we can understand that this person is clever also, or is more intelligent than me, or is smiling, is a lot of smile, but also it can be sad and be not smiling, because we are not always be smile. And it's also that someone is good at maths and is bad at maths, and also he or she can tell jokes, but she can't tell jokes, and it's normally that she can just a person who can't cook or can cook, so it's also normal, and it's someone like me, because our group is the diversity. And when we are thinking about the group affiliation, we can the stereotype activate. So we are make more carefully, and so you are strangers, so don't come to me. But we also can think, I don't know who you are because you are different. So it's so important to speak from the first years that we are all different, and it's not that it's normal, and we can call it the stranger group stereotype. And why we want to eliminate the stereotypes, why we should to eliminate stereotypes, because it's increased the education opportunities for others, because the education is for all, so we should know this and remember this, and to not make the division in the group of people, students in schools, to eliminate prejudice reaction among students, that we have to make everything to another student thinks that we are one group, and to change our behavior mostly to the people different that we are. And what happening in our education, and I would like to speak a lot to speak about the short research, because was the analysis of schools books 26 schools books, Polish schools books, and the results of this research was that the most of texts is only short story, but the others it's only information about disability without any plot. It's just information that someone is disability and what is disability, and this is what is not fine and maybe not good. That the when we see the plot, there are the children with disability. The most of them learn in special schools, and usually they are sad, lonely, poor, and healthy classmates just help there, and it save their world, and they think that they can do everything, and it shows that the able people are better and disabled people are worse, and has worse the level of life. So the results of this research is that we should shape positive models from an early age, and we should putting an individual in a lower position, make him treat him as a different, and school student book creates the image of disability, because the small children, mostly children in early age, the books, students' books is the first thing which they see and they read. When composing schools books, we should refer to psychological concepts, and the psychological said that we shouldn't show the stereotypes, and often the social world created in student books presents a disabled person as an inferior individual, and it's not good position. It's not good for disabled people, and it's only increase the level of discrimination, not do good things. So it's all for me, and thank you for attention.
Thank you very much. The next speaker will be Monika Pyrczak-Piega, the Pontifical University of John Paul II in Krakow. The title of presentation, Does Disability Limited Education Opportunities for Family Members? Theoretical and Practical Considerations.
Good morning, everyone. It's very nice to see you again today here in the main hall, and all those who are online. I'm too short for this place, so I'm not sure if you can see me. Sorry for that. Yes. Most of you here in this hall knows me, because most of you are my students, but let me introduce myself to the others who don't know me. I'm Monika Pyrczak-Piega. I am a lecturer here at the Pontifical University. I am a psychologist and the head of the disability office at our university. And also I am a person with disability. That's why this topic of my speech is very close to me, not only because of my work and because of the people who I work with, but also because I am disabled. I am with disability, not disabled. It's better to say like that. And that's why the title of my speech is, Does the Disability Limit Educational Opportunities for Family Members? Theoretical and Practical Considerations. I would like to present you a short part of definition of biopsycho-social model of disability and its impact on the educational opportunities of family members of a person with disability. And it's true that in the life of families there is no shortage of situations that can disrupt their well-being and functioning. One of them is the occurrence of an illness or disability in one of the family members. This is when everyday life changes dramatically, but it does not mean that this situation means an end to the happiness and well-being of family life. Many factors influence how families cope on day-to-day basis, both external, which are related to the family environment, and internal, which are related to the characteristics of individual family members. And it is important how a particular family responds to the limitations and demands of disability. Disability may be a factor that influences whether family members without disability have opportunities for educational development. It may or may not be a barrier to this opportunity. And I would like to present you a brief part of my PhD research showing if a disability of one of the family members influenced the educational opportunities of other family members in their opinion, in the opinion of a person with disability and in opinion other members of the family. I will show you a brief case study of an adult man who I know very well, and he is a husband and father. He don't have any disability, but his wife is a person with disability and his son is a person with disability. I have met him a few days before the conference and asked them, what do you think about it? Are you limited by the disability in the family? Because he has many things to do every day. 2 people in the family are people with disabilities. So I thought that it's very hard, but for a minute I will tell you about it. And this family of this man has significantly determined his educational opportunities in the course of his adult life, of course. Disability is not an attribute of a person that completely defines him. It is only one of his many characteristics that affects his functioning to certain extents. Disability is an inherent part of human functioning, and we know about it because almost every one person during his life can be person with disability. For a short time, for example, when there is some kind of accident or illness, or for a long time, just like me. This in turn affects many aspects and at any given time in people's lives. It is also seems important that not only people with legal disability, those people who have a legal document that they have some kind of disability, but also people with biological disability, they are considered like people with disabilities. They don't have any legal documents, but they are people with disabilities. And all those people are people who have some limitations. This disability affects the psychological functioning and performance in social roles, as a biopsychosocial model of disability says. The concept of disability has evolved with the development of knowledge about how people with the different type of disabilities function. Looking at the disability in terms of the dynamic interaction between health, individual and environmental conditions has given rise to the biopsychosocial model. It links disability to deficits, to activity limitations, to participation restrictions, disruptions of health homeostasis, and their negative impact on psychological and social functioning. So the model thus incorporates biological and social determinants of disability, and along with factors from the human body, the model implies the contribution of factors related to the psychological sphere of a person, which are internal factors, and his or her social life, which are external factors. And in 2020, I conducted brief researches of a picture which presents the family quality of life of women with disabilities. 65 women with disabilities and their partners participated in the study. There was 58.5% of women with moderate disabilities, 26.2% of women with severe disabilities, and 6.2% of women with mild disabilities, and there was 9.1% of women without a disability certificate, so they had a biological disability. Here in Poland, I will tell it for you because you are not from our country. Here in Poland, we have the law that the disability is divided to 3 levels. The women with disabilities and their partners were answered the question about the family's life picture, including the educational limitations of family members as a result of women's disability. For the purpose of the study, I have excluded mental deficits, mental illness, and holistic developmental disorders, which is autism. And the highest percentage in the terms of cause of disability was motor disability, as you can see here. Next was neurological diseases, which were often declared together with motor problems. Then voice, speech and hearing disorders, visual impairment, other disabilities, respiratory and circulatory diseases, gastrointestinal diseases, and genitourinary diseases. Women with disabilities participating in the study also declared the type of disability, and congenital disabilities affected 47.7% of the subjects, of the women, and acquired disabilities were referred to 52.3% of the women. And qualification to the study group of women with disabilities was based on 2 criteria. One of them was the legal criterion with the document, and the second one was a biological criterion without a document. I've asked them, does your disability or does your wife's or partner's disability limit other family members' educational opportunities? For example, giving up studies, attending courses, trainings, choosing a part-time form of education because of the need to support you, your wife, your partner in daily functioning. The question, as I said, was asked to both, to women and men, and answers were given on a 4-point scale. Definitely yes, rather no, or definitely no. And it was surprising. What you can see here for me, because 92.3% of women with disabilities and 92.3% of their husbands or partners stated that a woman's disability does not affect the educational opportunities and development of family members. And it was rather yes or definitely yes. So it is very surprising because when we think about stereotypes, as we heard before my presentation, we think that, of course, it limits everyone in the family, yes, because you must support this person with disability. What we can see? 7.7% of both women and men reported difficulties and limitations in this regard. And I think at this point it's worth considering, first of all, the impact of disability on the possibility of the development of family members, especially children. Motherhood of women with disabilities used to be presented like a category of challenge, overcoming many difficulties, the need for children to support the mother, which has an adverse effect of them. But mothers with disabilities experience very various social, psychological, economic, legal, architectural barriers. However, there is a tendency to find positive aspects in this motherhood. Disability can be a factor that supports child's social, emotional, or cognitive development. Those children experience special reinforcement in situations that are unique and belong only to the children of mothers with disabilities. They have many opportunities to develop special competencies, social competencies, for example, CODA. I'm not sure if you know who is CODA. Those are children, hearing children of parents who are deaf. So they translate in many situations their parents. So many social skills are developed in this time. And the independence of the children, of parents with disabilities develops earlier. The children may be more creative as a result of watching their parent handle multiple activities in their own way. And that's true. I have it with my daughter. Children may have a higher level of empathy, sensitivity, understanding of someone else's differences. So I think there are some good points of this situation. And the men from the family with disability. I found the confirmation of this research results in the words of him. His wife and his son, they have multiple sclerosis. And the son is an adult. He is finishing college right now for a few days, as I know. They have 2 children. The younger son is adult too, but he doesn't have any disability. The wife is full-time dependent person. She needs support in daily activities. And the husband is currently in his 3rd year of undergraduate studies. This is his 1st study degree. He has started it in a late age. And when I asked about the educational limitation, he answered emphatically, there are none. Really, he said, there are none. It all depends on how well he organizes his day. He gets up early, takes care of his businesses so that he can help his wife and son at the beginning of the day later. Then he has time to study, and he said good organization is essential. His family members' disabilities have guided his educational choices as well. He is burdened with most of the household things, which hinders his free access to study, but does not enable it, and sometimes even enhances and directs his academic choices and interests. So let me emphasize again, he has emphatically stated that this disability does not limit him, nor does it limit his younger son without disability. And in conclusion, I tried to show all of you the positive way of thinking about disability at the family, especially when we think about opportunities and limitations, in this case in the educational aspect. Disability in the family is a factor that may limit the educational opportunities of family members, of course, mainly because of free time. In this case, family members may have little of it because of the care they give to a person with disability. However, good organization, motivation to learn, experience of disability can strengthen the desire to learn, equip with skills not available to others, and shape strength of character, personality, traits needed at different stages of education. Certainly, the amount of time when family members spend supporting a person with a disability depends on the needs of that person. This is related to the type of disability, this is related to the cause of disability, And another important aspect is how the family member copes with and experiences the disability as some kind of experience in the family. But this is a broad topic beyond the time frame of this presentation. So thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much for very interesting presentation. And the next speaker, Roland Hegedus, University of Debrecen, subject liking and performance of students with different learning disabilities.
Yes, I am here. So I started the sharing the presentation. I'm searching where I can. You can see my presentation?
Yes, we can see. Thank you.
And skipping?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So my name is Roland Hegedus. I work at University of Debrecen and Eszterházy Károly Catholic University as an assistant lecturer. My presentation title is the subject liking and performance of the students with the different learning disabilities. I try to be very short before the cafe break. So first of all, I started with the literature review. I bring some main literature about these topics. In Hungary, the book of the Mesterházy and the Szekeres is the basic book. In this book, they describe the type of the characteristics of the learning disabilities. These learning disabilities is the dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia. Maybe you know that dyslexia has the reading problem, dysgraphia is the writing problems, and the dyscalculia is the mathematics problems in the studying. So it is my topics and the groups who I am analyzing in my presentation, and I will show the data about these groups. The next basic literature is Balázs et al. It is very important because in my research I analyzed the National Competency Survey. They work at educational office where they analyzing the National Competency Survey data, but they don't do the deep analysis. So it is important for me that I analyze that these groups where anybody know analyzing nowadays in Hungary. Okay, and the next, in my presentation I will talk about that mark, grade, average, and so on. So it is very important that which is effect on that these students the achievement. So there are a lot of effects or factors. For example, teachers, school maintenance, and so on. So it is very important, I think. And my presentation, one part, that subjects liking. Chapo did the research in these topics. He found the gender differences. M is mean that the man, F mean that the females. So he find that the male children like the physics, the female children like biology, grammar, literature, art, and foreign language, and he doesn't find significant differences between the genders, mathematics, chemistry, geography, and the history. Chikos did a similar research in Csongrád County. He finds that the physical education, biology, and informatics is a very liked subject, and the children don't like the geography, mathematics, physics subjects. So for me, it's a little bit surprising. And the next, the Krapán-Magdolna analyzing the nature science subject, and she said that the nature science in the bad position because the children don't like the nature science, biology, geography, physics, and chemistry. So it is the reason that I would like to analyzing the learning disabilities children who they like the different subjects. So you can read on my slide the research questions. In the research questions, I focus on the conduct and the effort and the average of the marks and subjects liking. So some information about the database and the method. I analyzed the 6th grade databases from this year in the National Competency Survey. It is a very big database because it's contained this highest number of students. Maybe it's every 6th grade students contain these databases. From the big data, there are the number of the students with the learning disabilities, but one children has a more learning disability. So it is the reason that I distinguish the 7 groups: the children who has a dyslexia, who has a dysgraphia, who has a dyscalculia, and the children who has a dyslexia and dysgraphia too. So it is the 6 groups. And the last is the all 3 types of the learning disabilities has. I mean, and I called these groups 3D. It is important because in the next time on the graphs you can see the 3D. It means that the children who has the all 3 types learning disabilities. In my analysis, I use the SPSS program and the ANOVA methods. So let's see that the distribution of the students with the learning disabilities, you can see that the highest number of the dyslexia and dysgraphia, the lowest number, the dyslexia and dyscalculia, and the 3D is the number. So I would like to show that the information about the grade average of the subjects at the end of the previous year. So when the student was 5th grade, you can see that the dyslexia students has the highest grade and the lowest has the 3D students. You can see that there is 0.5 point differences in the grade. In Hungary, we can see that it is a high differential between the groups. And this learning disabilities average, you can see that this is the number, the average of the grade. In the next, you can see that the grade average of the subjects at the half year, in the 6th year in the half, you can see that the dyslexia students has again the highest average, the lowest again, the 3D. In the next, I would like to analyzing the difference between the 2 semesters. You can see that in the half year, in the every time is the lowest the average. Maybe the reason that the teacher are strict in the half year than the end of the year. The next is show that the students' conduct grade and the students' effort grade. You can see that the learning disability students has the highest grade maybe in the conduct. The dyslexia dyscalculia has the highest average, the lowest again the 3D. And if we analyze the effort, you can see that the highest is in the dyslexia student, the lowest again the 3D in this topic. The next, we analyzing the grade average of the different subjects. We can see that that in the first position in the Hungarian literature grade average in every type and the group, and the second place maybe in the Hungarian grammar with the lowest average. But I would like show that the dyslexia and dysgraphia students who has these learning disabilities, they have the highest mathematics average than the Hungarian grammar. So it is interesting because all other groups, the mathematics has the lowest average. So it is a very complicated slide. You can see under that the groups names, and you can see that the all subjects that I analyzing. I need to say that the National Competencies Database has one big problem, that it is not contained separately the nature science. So I cannot analyzing in this in the sixth grade student. If we see that the students has more hated the mathematics subject and the Hungarian grammar, and they liked very well the art subject. And if we see the differences among the groups, we can see that the 3D groups is not hated the different subjects because they has not the lowest column in this graph. So summary, it is my presentation summary. You can see that the different groups of the learning disabilities has different liking the subject, and we find the differences in the effort and the conduct, and the learning disabilities effects on the students' achievement in the mathematics and grammar and so on. So thank you for your attention. Maybe I can be very short.
Thank you very much for your interesting presentation.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Thank you. And now is the time for discussion. There is any question for the presenter? If there is no questions, oh, there is.
You have asked about the size of the group. In my research is 65 women with disabilities and 65 husbands of or partners. Thank you.
Hello. I was just wondering, I had a question for the last speaker, and maybe it doesn't concern the topic too much, but I was wondering why, in his opinion, there are so little research connected with people with learning disabilities, people with dyslexia who got this special condition in their adulthood. And what recommendation can the very respectful speaker can give to those people, if any, of course? Thanks a lot.
Unfortunately, we don't have a connection with our last speaker, or we can try to connect with him. Unfortunately, he's online at this moment. We apologize for that. There is any question? If there isn't, we have a coffee break. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
przed nami, to my to tak jakby bez różnicy, czy będziemy przed nami, czy po nas. Ale gdzie tam nie trzeba zapisywać progres? Ja ale 2 razy się trzeba zapisywać? To ja się wpisałam.
Ja się chyba trochę obraziłam. No właśnie, to było też nietypowe.
And I will...
Proszę Państwa, ja rozumiem, ale jeszcze chwilę wytrzymajmy. Ostatnia sesja konferencji zaczynamy.
Okay.
Let's start.
So let me welcome all of you. We are approaching to the end of our conference because it is our last session. But before dealing with the presentations, I would like to start with an announcement due to the fact that our professor Gabor Bitso is absent and he will be substituted by me, but he will be capable of delivering his lecture. And there is one more thing that is important to point out. I would like to ask all of our presenters to stay until the end of the session, because if any kinds of questions come to the surface, that would be convenient to be able to answer all of them. And let me introduce myself in a nutshell. My name is Norbert Tóth, and I'm a junior lecturer at the University of Debrecen. I would like to ask our very first speaker, Sebestyén Krisztina from the University of Debrecen, and the title of her presentation is Foreign Language Choice of Students from Different Social Backgrounds in Secondary Schools. So, Krisztina, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I try to share my presentation. Do you see it, my presentation? And it's moved to? Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Two things I would like to say before my presentation. At first, I'm sorry that I cannot stay in the end of the session. So if you have some questions, that please take it after my presentation, or I would like to share with you my email address, and you can write me in email too. And second, I'm sorry, Norbert, I'm from the University of the Nyíregyháza. So my presentation. At first, some things about the literature review. So I will speak about that the connection of foreign languages and family background and social background. We know it that family background plays decisive role on individual language learning, and it is with the mother language too and the foreign languages too. We know about it some previous papers and some previous researches about it. Social background can means more things. One of these is the parents' background, and we know it about the educational level, we know it about the job, and the quality of the home life. For example, how many books they have, how many cultural programs they make, and so on. And this is very important, the family background, that what kind of languages the students learn. A previous research, we know it that lots of students choose German as foreign language in the Hungarian schools, and more students learn English than German, and lots of students in high schools learn both of them. Previous researchers, we know it that parents choose German for their children with higher social background. It's very important because in my database, I know it in two counties of Hungary, and previous researchers from other authors know it that parents with higher social background choose maybe English for their children. So it's a new information to this topic for me, and maybe for the other researcher too. Education of parents also determines the choice of foreign languages, because majority of the children of higher educated parents learn also English. So this is the reason that I said before it that I have a new data for it for my previous research. And this is the reason that I would like to show you that what kind of other data I have from my database in this topic. And children from lower social status choose the nearest institution of their home. And this is the reason that maybe they cannot choose school and languages and so on, because they haven't got any chance to learn further from their home. So the given area influences children's educational opportunities. My hypothesis in my presentation that based on the social background, a difference can be found in the choice of foreign language in high school, and this difference also appears in the choice of secondary school. And some information about my database. It's called German Learning and Teaching in Hajdú-Bihar and Szabolcs-Szentmárbereg counties. In this database, there are 890 people who was in the school year 2018 and 2019 11th grade. In Hungary, there are 3 types of secondary schools, and I researched only 2 types from it, high schools and vocational high schools. This was the reason was it that these 2 types will be ended with secondary school leaving exam, and one of my point of my research, it was very important for me. So this is the reason that I researched only 2 type of the 3 types of vocation of secondary schools in Hungary. These students who are in my database learn German and or English in the high schools. Usually in high schools learn both of them, and in the vocational schools learned one of the both languages. And data was analyzed with SPSS program. I made cluster analysis and some crosstabs it. And main variables I would like to show you, but I used in my presentation, learned languages. You can see that how many people learn only German, only English, or both of them. Social background, I have 2 groups for it. Students with high social background, that means that their parents have at least middle-level education, and they financial background is at least average. And low social background, there are more people in my database, and they haven't got this level, but I said in high school background, high social background. I made 4 clusters group from my database. Profession-oriented commuter, we can see that usually they learned in vocational high schools, and they would like to get a good job, and they can travel to a better school. That means that they have a better family background. Those wishing to break out, they have a lower social background, and they learn sometimes in dormitories, but they cannot travel too far from their home. Higher educational oriented locale, they are the lowest group. They live already in cities, but they have a lower social background too. And in other researchers, I know it that they have better students' achievement too. And the last cluster is survivors. They are very interesting group because they haven't got any future plans. They haven't got any deals. They would like only survive the secondary school. And type of the secondary schools, as I said, we have some people from the high schools and the vocational high schools too. And some data from my database, foreign languages that the students studied in secondary schools in relation to the social background of students. You can see here that lots of students learn in low and high family background to German and English languages too. And the difference is that English only English learners are in bigger proportion in the lower social background. And you can see here too that more students learn in the higher social background English and German too. So that means that maybe they can go in high schools in the secondary school types too. Distribution of students according to the family background within training types. You can see here what I said, that lots of students with the low social background studied in vocational high schools. And lots of students with better family background learn in high schools too. In Hungary, the high schools have a deal that the students learn further, usually in universities and colleges. And this is the reason that students with higher family background or social background choose already this type too. From vocational high schools, they can go to the universities too, but they get a vocation too, and lots of students, for example, lower social background, choose this way that they find a job on the labor market after vocational high schools. Okay, distribution of foreign languages studied in high schools depending on social background and training type. We can see here a bigger table, and you can see here very interesting proportions. For example, students with lower social background learn in vocational schools in more proportion German, only German. And you can see here that lots of students learn English too, that this is the reason that I said that in vocational high schools learn the students usually in Hungary only one foreign languages. There are a very little proportion who are learn German and English too. And it's very interesting too that in vocational high schools with lower social background learn the students almost 28% German. And you can see here that, for example, in higher social background, it's a higher proportion. That means that more than 30% of students learn German as foreign language in vocational high schools. And you can see here that in the high schools learn with students with higher social background. And this is the reason that more than 80%, almost 90% of the students learn German and English too. So both of the researched languages. Here. Distribution of students by family background within the students clusters. And we can see here that, what I said, profession-oriented commuters learn in, not learn, I'm sorry. So profession-oriented commuters has a better family background, and then the other clusters. And after it, we can see that the second and the third of clusters are very similar, but the difference, we know it from other researchers that the hometown exactly. That means that higher education-oriented local live usually in cities. And you can see here that lots of students has lower family background in the second, third, and fourth clusters too. Distribution of foreign languages learned in secondary school within the clusters too. And we can see here that profession-oriented commuter learn German in the highest proportion of the clusters. You can see here lower proportions in the other three clusters. And we can see here that lots of students learn English too in these clusters. That means that we, in the previous slide, saw that lots of students in this cluster learned in vocational schools too. The highest proportion of the German and English learners have in higher education-oriented locale. That means that they would like to go to the university or colleges, and they learned almost in high schools. It's very interesting too that they have very little differences by the survivors who learned English and German and English. This is the reason I think that they haven't got any fixed plans for the future. They would like only survive the secondary school years. Okay, and as a summary, we saw that the choice of foreign language in primary school basically determines the language learned in secondary schools, because I speak about it, that lots of students learned, it was the literature review, learned those languages that the parents choose for them in the primary school. Proportion of students who learn German and also German, that means German and English too, with a higher social background is higher. You can see here the proportions too. And it's very different in the case of the English, because students with higher social background learn more English than students who learn with higher social background German. And the difference is not so big if you see with the higher social background students and lower social background students who learn English and also English. My research is in line with the previous findings. That means that students with higher social backgrounds preferably study in grammar schools or high schools. New findings is that the students from higher social background learn also German. And my hypothesis was what I said in the beginning of my presentation, that was only partially confirmed, because there are differences in choice of foreign languages in secondary schools by the students with different social background. But this pattern can no longer be detected in choosing secondary schools and clusters. So that means that my hypothesis was only partially confirmed. And based on this, I can see that foreign languages has big preference in the students' families who have better family background, but I think that the choosing secondary schools, it is not determined by choosing foreign languages. So I think that I should choose another way to research this topic too. And these are my references, what you can see in my presentation. And thank you for your attention. And you can see here my email address too, if you have any questions too.
Thank you very much, Christina, for your presentation. I would like to ask the audience that if you have any sort of question, it can be delivered now due to the fact that Christina has to leave.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for your attention too. And good presentation for the next presenters. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye. And the next presenter will be me, yeah? Okay, thank you. So as I have already introduced myself, my name is Norbert Tóth and I come from the University of Debrecen. Concerning my current presentation, the title of it is Theoretical and Methodological Paradigms of Anthropology of Education. I would say that my lecture can be interpreted on two levels. On one hand, I will intend to present the place of anthropology of education in the science system and to reflect upon the possible application of its basic concept in the Hungarian research on sigonology. Because I would like to point out that in Hungary, the school performance of Roma pupils has been studied in many different ways, but the so-called pedagogical anthropological perspectives haven't gained real ground in the scientific discourse. Anyway, we can prove it without any kinds of difficulties, because if you want to find any kinds of relevant literature in Hungarian on that subject, you will certainly not find any. As a consequence of that, I was under the obligation to rely on international literature. On the other hand, I will show how the outline theoretical framework has been used in my own empirical research. My starting point is the so-called modern sociocultural anthropology, which has a field called Anthropological Trends. These trends were emerged after the Second World War, and their essence is to borrow theory, methodology, and other basic concepts from other disciplines. And these trends are largely concerned with the basic problem of anthropology. And obviously, the question may come to the surface intuitively that what do we mean by the problem of anthropology? This question sounds like this. What is the reason behind the fact that human creates a socioculturally diverse environment, even if their biological constraints are the same, their instincts are the same, and yet they have a different sociocultural content. So for instance, humans create different cultures, they live in different kinds of societies with different kinds of norms and values, or even they have a different sort of religious system. So actually this is the fundamental question of anthropology. And these trends, these anthropological trends that were emerged in 1950s, try to answer this question by relying on other disciplines within anthropology, such as the cognitive anthropology, which primarily focuses on psychology, or even we can mention the ecological anthropology, which examines how each culture can be characterized by a natural environment. And we can say that the anthropology of education, or in other words, pedagogical anthropology, these two terms can be used interchangeably. So anthropology of education behaves like an anthropological trend. Why? Because it explores how pedagogy can be applied to the interpretation and treatment of problems with anthropological profile, with anthropological dimensions, where some kind of integration movement has to be carried out between groups living at different cultural distances. So actually, the integration movements have to be organized because they do not happen automatically. And the first and the most relevant practical example of this phenomena is the North American Indian communities, because Indian children live in reservation area, and they are under the obligation to perform well at schools, at those kinds of schools that are operated by the majority's values, norms, or even conditions. And actually, this analog, this phenomena can be borrowed, can be applied in the case of Hungarian Roma students as well, because Roma students live in segregation area, and they have to be successful at schools with majority's values and principles. And different kinds of problems come to the surface due to the bicultural socialization, the background of the bicultural socialization. And in this particular case, the cultural difference is a central issue, because cultural difference makes it impossible for an Indian child, or even for a Roma child, to be successful at school. And here comes the importance of pedagogical anthropology in recognizing the cultural difference and reflecting upon it as a crisis situation. So there's a really important characteristics of pedagogical anthropology. And there is one more thing that must be emphasized, and it is in connection with the fact that pedagogical anthropology behaves as an anthropological subdiscipline with practical value and practical relevance. And actually, its practical or applied value links pedagogical anthropology to another large field of anthropology called applied anthropology. And there is a realization in American society that anthropological knowledge has practical value. But what does it mean that anthropological knowledge have practical value? Actually, there was a realization that that the knowledge that can be generated by empirical applied researches can come up with a very important knowledge, and this knowledge can be described by three fundamental concepts, because this kind of knowledge can be regarded as an emic, ideographic, and synchronic knowledge. The Emic Perspective refers to the idea that it is worth seeking local, autonomous interpretation when we deal with local scenes, local communities, and interpretation is left to locals, because Emic research is based on the assumption that the best way to understand the culture is to explore the interrelationship within that particular culture that is examined. The ideographic perspective comes from the idea that researchers intend to move away from their own preconceptions, and they focus on direct experience. And the last one, the synchronic, actually it is centered around the phenomena that when you want to examine, when you want and to describe a particular scene, the historicity is not so important. So history is important, but only in the case if it has any kind of impact on the current situation. So for instance, in my case, when I do anthropological profile field research, I don't care about the historicity, the historical background, because it hasn't got a really relevant connection with the current situation that I am interested in. And as a conclusion, I would like to highlight the spectrum of pedagogical anthropology, which is quite broad. First and foremost, it deals with the socialization functions of schools, the transmission of culture, so the process of enculturation, and it also examines the role of ethnocentrism in the reproduction of inequalities, and as a counterbalance, cultural relativism is also a crucial factor, a crucial phenomena, and cultural relativism is important because it calls for an unbiased evaluation of different culture, and it's very, very important to leave behind your different kinds of preconceptions. And this is the last one is the most important theoretical characteristic from the perspective of my own research, that social mechanisms in each community are situational, and as a consequence of that, the attempt to solve the problem must be situational. So situational characteristic is very, very important. And my empirical research has been carried out in Hungary, obviously, in Szabolcs-Szatmár-Bereg County, in three towns. Actually, Ibrány is a town, Kóta and Tiszabet is a kind of village. I didn't want to go into details to describe this scenes because it would require a great amount of time. But I would like to mention some information about the gist of the research. The topic of the empirical research is based on the basic concept that Roma pupils are less successful than their non-Roma counterparts. And for the purpose of my study, progress and success mean that Roma pupils have a higher dropout rate comparing to non-Roma pupils. And in our case, dropouts are understood as grade repetition and even below average school performance. And there is one more important thing that worth mentioning, and it is the deviance rate, which is higher, much higher in the case of Roma students compared to non-Roma ones. And actually, it is a really relevant question and problem. That's why I have thought that it is worth to bear in mind, to keep in mind when I do my fieldwork. And based on what I have outlined so far, I would say that the focus of our investigation, therefore, can be regarded as a practical and important research from different kinds of perspectives. I would like to deliver to mention my research questions because they they gave me a special unit, a special route, a special itinerary, how to deal with different kinds of phenomena. And my first research question is, why is the school progress of the Roma children living in the exam settlements weaker than of their non-Roma peers to the community? I also examine what kinds of correlation can be found from the perspective of sociocultural conditions. So I'm interested in the attitude of Roma students. So what kinds of attitudes they have in connection with schools. And I would like to mention my sample. My sample is based on three perspectives. I try to figure out what is the situation in that particular town. I mean, I want to detect the context of the local scene from different kinds of perspectives, because my empirical researches can be interpreted really well if I am aware of the current situation that can be detected in that particular scene. The other stage is the staff of the local elementary school, and due to the fact that it is a kind of anthropological profile research, I carry out fieldwork in local Roma communities. I suppose that outlining the research results would be another presentation, and that is the reason why I finish my speech at this point. Thank you for your attention. And our next lecturer will be Bicó Gábor, and I would like you to ask Gábor to deliver your presentation, to deliver your speech.
Okay. Good morning for everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. And first of all, I'm very sorry not to be there, and I try to summarize my lecture, to read it up because it's a written text. I'm going to skip a part of that because it's a bit longer than it was planned originally for the lecture, approximately 18 pages, but don't be frightened. I don't want to read up all of these lengths of the text. Okay, I'm going to talk about the sociocultural integration of Romani communities, especially in Hungary, but the context is a wider one, you know, and in the introductory part, I'm going to detail these aspects, and after that, I try to analyze an example of this situation that is a fieldwork, that was a fieldwork, and that is the base of my text. Okay, in this short lecture, I would like to interpret a few significant aspects of the social cultural integration of Romani people. My lecture deals with the outstanding aspects of the complexity of integration of Romani people in Central Europe and Hungary in particular. When approaching the integration issue concerning Romani people, three unavoidable questions arise. Firstly, the socio-cultural heterogeneity of Romani communities. Second, is the problem of the disadvantaged social-cultural and economic status of the local population in peripheral geographic areas. And last but not least, we need to deal with the question of education as a key factor of the integration process. Basic facts. Please, the first slide, if possible. Thank you. Recently, the accurate number of Roma people in Europe is one of the most contested ethnostatistical mysteries. If we compare the official statistical figures with the real estimation, the difference is quite salient. If we take a look at the statistical map of Romani people in Europe, the issue is clear. According to the unofficial estimations, the real number of Roma inhabitants, especially in Central European and Balkan countries, is several times higher than it is registered in the official statistics. The discrepancy is more striking if we analyze the statistics in exact numbers. Please, the next slide. The total number of Romani people in Europe on the basis of average estimations can be somewhere between 10 and 12 million, out of which more than 5 million live in the Central European and Balkan countries. Nevertheless, in contrast with the statistical weight, one can assess that the significance of integration process of this discriminated, pauperized, and marginalized population is undervalued. These disintegrated minorities used to be labeled as the most unwanted people of Europe. All in all, this statement isn't an exaggeration, but a simple fact. For example, in 2011, the most watched TV show in the United Kingdom was My Fat Gypsy Wedding, which follows young Irish gypsy travelers as they prepare for their traditionally extreme wedding. However, the pseudo-documentary offered a superficial insight into the travelers' community life, but according to some anti-racial organizations, the show has contributed to the rising of anti-Romani sentiment in the United Kingdom. Please, the next slide. A few years ago, during my visit to the United Kingdom, I had a talk with the leader of the Racial Equality Council in Plymouth, Devon, and she described the seriousness of anti-Romanism or anti-Gypsyism with a clear example. For an Englishman, a migrant from India or from Africa is more acceptable than a traveler gypsy who was born in England. That means the gypsy is ranked at the lowest social cultural status in the informal social hierarchy of the United Kingdom. Please, the next slide. In the case of Central European and Balkan countries, the challenge of integration of Romani people is more problematic social-cultural and socio-economic challenge than in the United Kingdom or in other countries, in other European countries. For example, the integration issue is a key factor in social life in Slovakia or in Bulgaria, where the proportion of Romani people is more than 10% within the total population, and there are local regions where the social crisis of segregation constantly threatens with riot. In Slovakia, half of the Roma population reside in exclusively Roma neighborhoods, from which some 50,000 Roma still live in 281 segregated settlements, many of which lack water and electricity. With roughly 75% of Roma people being unemployed in most of the Central European and Balkan countries, the lack of inclusion in the labor market is a key factor in the integration process. In the Czech Republic, the unemployment rate is as high as 85%. We can find as a similar cause that also justifies the limitations in entering the labor market, that it is the undereducation. In Romania, nearly half of the Romanist population was illiterate in 2011. In Bulgaria, 3 out of 4 Roma, around 400,000 people, don't have an elementary school education. The enumeration of similar characteristics with regard to the general description of Romani communities in Central Europe and Balkan can be continuous and lasting. Now, let's see the social cultural heterogeneity of the Romani communities in Hungary. From now on, for the sake of better understanding, I'll focus on, especially on the Hungarian social cultural space. First of all, we should define what this social cultural heterogeneity means in the context of Romani communities. The term heterogeneity in the cited context includes numerous cultural and social viewpoints and situational coexistence of fragmented local subgroups with the majority. In other words, all local communities embedded in the majority have to adapt to the wider social cultural environment. The adaptation process depends on the particular situation that is determined by the quality of cohabitation between the minority Romani and majority communities. Let's see the historical background in Hungary. The Roma, as a general category, actually a label is used in everyday public communication, just like a word that has a fixed meaning and accurate denotation. It looks as if the name Roma would circumscribe a specific community, but reality offers a fundamentally different picture. Please, the next slide. Yes. The different historical backgrounds of Romani communities shall be also accounted for their very different scale of values and social structures. The integration level also varies with the subgroups. In Hungary, the most advanced integration can be observed at the Romani communities, but the differences are remarkable among them, depending first of all on the location. On the contrary, Olah or Vlach Gypsy communities are extremely introverted traditional groups, where the endogamy as a basic rule of marriage is also left present. Distinctions of numerous groups and subgroups might create tensions. For example, the more traditional Black Roma in Hungary doesn't mix with the more integrated Roma girls. To tell the truth, Black Romani groups are quite legitimate generally toward the Roma girls. Given the historically determined diversity of Romani community, it is difficult to generalize the characteristics of Roma culture. We can say there is not any universal cultural code that can be the base of a stable common ground. Nevertheless, observing from a reverse angle the lack of cohesive general cultural substrate of Romani communities, but their adaptivity can be defined as a common social cultural feature. In other words, the original characteristic of Romani communities is that they are able to adapt to any environmental challenge quite flexibly. But thanks to the extraordinarily diverse geographical dispersion, the ability of adaptability is a key factor of the social cultural heterogeneity of Romani communities. About the marginalized physical and social cultural status of Romani communities in Hungary. In Central Europe, there was a long historical process of physical marginalization of Romani people from the beginning of the 19th century up to the present. Respecting the available time for presentation, this complicated process cannot be analyzed here in detail. However, the recent situation and demographic trends are going to be shown on the next few slides. The geographical location of Romani population in Hungary is visualized at the level of settlements. We can observe the increasing density of Romani population at the northeastern and southwestern peripheries along the border. Let's see the next slide, please. Thank you. According to the last census, Hungary has about 3,200 settlements, and in more than 2,000 settlements, Romani communities can be found. The concentration of Roma population is regionally concentrated. The next slide, please. The demographic tendencies are also quite clear in terms of the close future. In 2050, the expected number of Romani population can be 1.2, 1.4 million in a population of less than 8 million in Hungary. If we have a look at the chart, proportion of Romani children in primary schools in Hungary, please the next slide, we can see the background of this exceptional increase. Unsurprisingly, the counties represented by higher proportions are also found in the northeastern and in the southwestern border regions. The above presented demographic tendency coincide with other important social cultural factors forming a multi-dimensional problem. By analyzing the nationwide unemployment rates as well as the statistics of education and inner migration, the accelerating deterioration of the number of peripheries in Hungary becomes obvious. Moreover, the situation is astonishingly similar in every Central European countries. Please, the next slide. Yes, and after the next one. Thank you. In summary, we can say that the challenge of the integration issue of Romani people in Hungary as well as in Central Europe is a multi-dimensional issue. The successful social cultural integration of Romani communities requires taking a number of particular factors into consideration. Okay, and now let's see an example that is fieldwork based analyzation, shortly interpreted situation where these multi-dimensional aspects can be fixed. From now on, I would like to present this case study from anthropological viewpoint. The case study shed a light on the multi-dimensional of Romani integration issue as one of the most challenging aspects of ethnic cohabitation. Let's see the next chart, please. Next slide. And next one. Yes, thank you. The spot of my example is Crete. It is located in Romania, quite close to the Hungarian border, and the city of Emic Perspective. This multi-ethnic village is situated south of the river Savos on the alluvial plain. The next slide, please. Here, the advantage is its fertile soil. The ethnic composition of the population is extremely colorful. Here it is inhabited by Hungarians, Romanians, and Gypsies, and this fact makes it possible to outline a full-scale analysis of the topic. Let's see the next thing. If we take a look at the chart above, we can observe an interesting demographic tendency. The figures show that female population was halved in the last 70 years. The linear decrease in the total population is a fact and symptom in the neighboring settlements in humid surroundings and usually in the peripheral regions all over the rural areas in Central Europe as well. Another peculiar change is the realignment of ethnic proportions. Simplifying the case, we can talk about the decrease in the number of Hungarians and Romanians, but an obvious decrease in the Romani Gypsy population. Although no precise statistics are available showing the number of the Romanis in the early 20th century era, we have to state the fact that today more than 1/3 of the total population belongs to the local Romani community. According to results of my field research, official statistical data may be completed with further conclusions. Let me frame the deeper context of the multi-ethnic cohabitation issue in here a bit later. In other words, I would like to present a highly complicated aspect of the cohabitation issue from an anthropological research view, going beyond data and figures. The decrease of Hungarian and Romani population may basically be explained with the same causes. Both migration and aging are unavoidable factors. Also, those working in the cities or abroad, even if temporarily, don't take part in the community life either. The salient absence of the diets is defining elements of general street image in the village areas inhabited mainly by Hungarians and Romanians. School children in Hirik often live with the grandparents, whose their parents are working somewhere else. Despite of the similar life situation of the Hungarian and Romanian local community, we can find lots of difference between their social cultural features. They speak each other's language, but the use of the mother tongue is determining the families. The situation is even more complicated concerned with the religion. The Hungarian population is mostly Calvinist, but there is also a Roman Catholic minorities congregation among them. This double religious structure can also be observed in the Romanian community. They are mostly Orthodox, but a couple of families attend to the Greek-Catholic services. Despite the differences, the Hungarians and Romanians form a local coalition against the Romani community. Let's see the next slide, please. The Romani community here consists of 3 further minor suburbs. The Hungarian-speaking Gypsies are Calvinists. The Romanian-speaking families are mostly Orthodox. The people who speak Romani are Pentecostal. We can conclude on the basis of field research that the fragmented structure of Romani community is a very observable characteristic of the Gypsy segregation. Let's see the next, please. As it is marked on the next schematic map, there is a national borderline between the village center and the segregated area. This physical, as well as symbolic threshold, is the Homorod Creek, dividing the settlement into 2 clear distinguishable units. Actually, as it is mentioned by the interlocutors, the crossing point is a tiny wood bridge over the creek. The segregation area consists of 2 streets. The western part is inhabited mostly by Hungarian-speaking Gypsies, and the eastern part mostly by Romanian-speaking Gypsies. Please the next slide. In order to understand the characteristics of cohabitation in Greek on the basis of fragmented social cultural space, the first step has to be the definition of interest and conflicts. Each affected community has a special interest, and as a consequence of opposed interests, the subgroups are involved in conflicts with each other. The main rupture of the local society here is the opposition between the Romani community and every other ethnic groups. In other words, the Hungarians and Romanians stand on the same side against the right name Gypsy population. Although the households are clearly separated, there are only a few Hungarian-Romanian mixed marriages, both communities have the same feelings toward the threatening invasion of Gypsies. This is clearly characterized by the rapidly changing ethnic structure of school classes and kindergarten groups. Recently, it is very characteristic in both the Romanian and Hungarian-speaking school classes, kindergarten groups, that Gypsies are overrepresented. However, we can also see cultural rupture among the Romani subgroups as well. Surprisingly, there is no Hungarian-Romanian-speaking Gypsy mixed marriages within the Romani community. What is more, there are serious conflicts and fights between them. The kind of tension can be traced back to the different migration history of 2 Gypsy subgroups. When one visits the Gypsy district, in hearing poverty is the most salient impression. The unemployment rate within the Romani population was higher than 90% in the moment of the research. Besides, social and irregular day labor provides income for the families. After the collapse of industry and socialist collective firms, the uneducated Gypsies have remained without work. Now the second generation grows up in a family model, the everyday work is a rarity. Summarizing the partial consequences of the hitherto analyzed details of cohabitation issue in Europe, we have to emphasize the complexity of the situation. Multi-ethnicity, different religious groups, and the decreasing number of population are the main determining aspects of contemporary social life in Europe. On the one hand, there are the autochthonous Hungarian, Romanian, and communities, and on the other hand, there is the deeply divided local Romani community. And now, please let's see the next chart. However, more and more Hungarian as well as Romanian families send their children to the school in Stereotype, that is the community center, the cause of decreasing the quality of education in Hungary. In opinion, this is a solvable process. This process is known as the spontaneous segregation. The Stereotype primary school is happy to attract more school children, since the decrease of pupils is a grave problem for them as well. Analyzing the social case maps of the articulation theory, we confront with a very confusing system of interest. The question arises, how can the local school preserve this basically paradoxical network of social interest theory? And I found in my research the key figure, in other words, the key actor of the situation is the school mistress. Please, the next slide. Nevertheless, the 38-year-old woman has realized the complexity of the situation. She came to live in the village by way of her marriage, and she has great sensitivity toward prejudices, deep poverty, and modest hygienic circumstances. She has them in every possible way, both physically and pedagogically. After 2 years of fight with the central school administration in Szatmárpályán, she has obtained an official license for the primary school in Hungary to work further. In my short example, I have outlined the basic social cultural features of local multi-ethnic community. In anthropological field research, I focus on unique and particular factors and conditions of the local environment. As we found, the different ethnic groups might be characterized with special cultural qualities and interests. This complex network interest includes the feasibility of integration of the local Romani society, as well as the possibility of direct conflicts. The question is, what is going to happen in the close future? The social scientific study of the multi-ethnic local scenes like here is a very important challenge in Central Europe. From anthropological viewpoint, feedback of relevant research results may be an important contribution to the solution of local social problems and to the successful integration of Romani community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your lecture. Gabor, are you capable of staying with us until the end of the session?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so the audience will have an opportunity to ask Gabor later. But I would like to ask the next presenters, who will be Gál Katalin and Pastor Gisella. The title of their presentation is Early School Living, Case Studies from Partium. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And I will share my screen. Please give me a feedback if you can see my presentation. Okay, and I am going to full screen. Right now it's okay. Thank you very much. And hello everyone in this conference, and I'm sorry that I was late, but the time differences between our countries gave me some confusions. So our research and study is about early school living, and I came here with some case studies from Produkcja. This is a research made last year here in this our area. Actually, we are talking about concepts like dropout from school, early school living. Here are some concepts about qualifications, need people. Actually, we are talking about school failures and learning failures, and in this research area where we were questioning the teachers, we can talk also about disadvantages from ethnical and different kind of point of view. It is a measured and measurable concept, and later we will see also some statistics, like here, to make the difference between dropout from school in the educational process and early school leaving. We made these two categories, and we were talking about the both situations. And we will see in our research results that in the teacher's mind, and actually on the institutional level, these two different phenomena are actually in the same category in their minds. Here, just to locate our countries on the European level, if we are talking about early school leaving, here we can see Romania in the front of these statistics, this very good third place for our country. In the European, actually Romania couldn't achieve in the European 2002 strategy to reduce the early school leavers. So in this programming period, 2014 and 20, we did not achieve this goal, and in the present, the Romanian government launched several programs for schools to apply for money to help to reduce early school leaving. Also, our research were made in this context because the schools which represented the location of our research, a high school from Oradea, a vocational school from Borș. This is a village next to Oradea, and in Săpuieni, 3 other schools. These schools intended to apply for European fundings to reduce early school leaving in these institutions, and our job was to collect data how teachers are thinking about early school leaving and those activities which can help to prevent this phenomenon. So, as I mentioned earlier, the research were held in November-December 2021, and it was an online survey. And our subjects were the teachers from these schools. The main dimension of our research were the general situation about early school leaving in the educational institution. We tried to design the characteristics of the typical early leaver from schools, to collect information about the relevance of the problem in the teacher's mind, and to map the prevention activities to reduce early school leaving. We can see the general situation. Here are some results. More than 90% in Oradea, Borș, and also in schools from Săpuieni and that area say that early school leaving is a huge problem in Romania. Here we can see some interesting differences, and it is very welcome that the presenter before me was talking about Roma situation in the research area. Here, the early school leaving in these schools in Săpuieni, Cardea, and Sân Nicolau de Munte, but actually these locations, Cardea and Sân Nicolau de Munte, are connected to this city, Săpuieni. So the early school leaving is a much more problem in these schools, because here we can face a higher percent of Roma person And when later we will see, when we will talk about the causes of early school leaving, we will see some differences in this point. And more than 70% think that the prevention activities are highly needed in these schools. We made word clouds also when we were asking teachers to say words and concepts connected to early school leaving, and the word problem and poverty was the most popular, but in the other area, the ethnicity, like the Roma or Gypsy, are more pronounced. In both main locations, we identified a kind of bipolar vision on early school leaving, because teachers identified systemic and structural problems related to vulnerability of children, but they did not identify their own personal responsibility and the responsibility of their own institution, what to do with this phenomenon. And they are waiting systemic, centralized solutions to prevent early school leaving. So the role of the school and the role of the teacher are not highlighted in their answers. And here you can see we try to identify the characteristics of typical early school leavers, and words like poverty, poor, single families, problems, lack of something can be identified, and here, as we can see, also the ethnicity in Szakujénkádia and Szent-Nicolau de Munte, the ethnicity is an important characteristic of the typical early school leaver. Here can we see the causes of early school leaving, and what is represented higher in Szakujénkádia and Szent-Nicolau de Munte. Here can we see the seasonal work and supervision of younger members of the families, and also the healthy early marriage, pregnancy is represented as a cause of early school leaving. The family problems are identified by teachers as main problems. Also the poverty, lack of motivation. Generally, the teacher, as I mentioned earlier, they are viewing early school leaving as a phenomenon which is general in our country. There is a highly need to intervention on structural level, on national level, and the causes of early school leaving, when they are mentioning these causes, they are identifying individual characteristics and concepts related to family and vulnerability. But this bipolar vision is represented also in these diagrams. We asked to identify also some activities which can be described in the future projects to apply for money to implement early school leaving prevention projects. And they identified absolutely in each schools the parent educational intervention and the introduction of financial allowances was highly represented, but also to give personal support for children at risk, and the mentoring activities in education to help them to have much more success in the educational process. So this and other extracurricular activities, they mentioned special methods, Lego education, other outdoor activities. We had some open questions also in this questionnaire, so they mentioned very much outdoor activities, not in the school, far away from school, to motivate these children and to help and generally to prevent this early school leaving phenomenon. Our research was held in the context of the European Union founding project, as I mentioned earlier, but through this online survey with teachers from 5 schools, we identified, I guess, a very important problem, which maybe can help us to understand the early school leaving story in Romania, because since 1989, after the revolution, the local governments and the local school institutions would like to get part in a decentralization, to be able to decide on local level to make decisions. But in the vision of the problematic of early school leaving, we can see that in the educational system of Romania, which is still very, very centralized, and it depends on government and county educational decisional institutions, the schools and teachers are still waiting on the one hand to have structural interventions. On the other hand, without these system-level interventions, they are very inventive and very innovative to implement local best practices to prevent early school leaving. So we can see that it's a multi-actor solution, but it's a multi-actor problem which needs multi-actor solutions. But there are several good practices on local level, but the next level, the dissemination, interinstitutional dissemination is already problematic, and these schools, these educational institutions are waiting for national intervention from the level of ministry to help them to prevent or to get interventions when they are facing early school leaving. After this research, just a few months after our research, the Ministry of National Education from Romania implemented a program, and in 2 months they made the evaluation of about 2,000 project applications, and in few months these 2,000 projects are going to have the implementation level, and there will be another call for other couple of thousands of educational institutions. So after, I don't know, 6 months or 1 year, we can see if what are happening in these educational institutions, because if they were waiting for national level intervention and they will get money to implement early school leaving prevention activities, we will see in a couple of years where will be our country's position on the level of the European Union if we are talking about early school leaving. Thank you very much for your attention. And I will stop.
Thank you very much for this really interesting presentation. I would like to ask the audience that is there anyone who has any kinds of question or remarks or whatever that seems worth mentioning? If you have no question, we have reached the end of this session due to the fact that Csilla Réthárti carried out her presentation yesterday. So I would like to thank you, all of you, for your presentation, and I would like to ask Gábor that would you like to deliver your closing speech?
Norby, may I ask you, I sent to you a short text, and which is better if you are in person there and you can read it up.
Okay, I will impart your words.
I guess it's a better solution than to be virtually there.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we will solve it. Okay. So first of all, I would like to express my gratitude to the organizers for their effort. The organization of this conference was as perfect as possible. We had a really great time here, and we do hope that our cooperation will be fruitful in the future. Next year, we will welcome you in Hajdúböszörmény at our faculty, and we hope that we will be able to continue our academic cooperation in the long run as well. So on behalf of our faculty, I would like to express my gratitude not just to the organizers but to the students for their presence and effort that they made during these 2 days. Thank you very much.